My son's fiancée wanted to humiliate me, but she didn't know who I really was. When I met my son's fiancée, she looked me up and down, then laughed. At least you won't need a mask for Halloween, she said. You're scary enough as it is. Her words hit harder than I expected, like a betrayal, not from a stranger, but from someone about to join my family. But when her parents saw me later that evening, they froze. Her mother's face went pale, her father's eyes filled with tears. Is it really you? They whispered. And in that moment, her world began to unravel. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. I checked the roast one last time, pressing my finger against the crust. Perfect. The potatoes were golden, just the way my late wife Marie used to make them, and the green beans sat neatly in the old serving dish I'd inherited from my mother. At 62, I knew first impressions mattered. I wanted my son's fiancée to see that his father could still host a proper dinner. The dining room was spotless, the mahogany table polished until it gleamed, chairs aligned just right, cloth napkins instead of paper. Her name was Pearl Morrison. Gordon had been dating her for 4 months and spoke about her with a joy I hadn't seen in him since his divorce 3 years ago. I wanted to like her. I wanted this to work. The doorbell rang at 6 sharp. I straightened my shirt, took a deep breath, and opened the door with what I hoped was a warm, fatherly smile. At least you won't need a Halloween mask, she said with a smirk. You're scary enough already. The smile froze on my face. She stood there, blonde hair slicked back, clothes probably worth more than my pension, confidence dripping off her every move. Gordon stood beside her, and instead of defending me, he laughed. A nervous, awkward laugh, but it cut just the same. Come in, I said quietly. Dinner's ready. Inside, Pearl's eyes darted everywhere. The door frame, the coat rack, the living room, as if she were appraising the place, not visiting it. Gordon followed her, giving me a quick pat on the shoulder. It felt less like affection, more like an apology. In the dining room, I pulled out their chairs. Pearl sat, looked around, and smiled thinly. Gordon said you've lived here forever. The furniture certainly proves it. Ever think about updating? I set the roast down carefully. I like my home the way it is. Of course you do, she said, still smiling. But her eyes, cold and assessing, said something else. Gordon tried to smooth it over. Dad's sentimental about this place. Right, Dad? I didn't answer. I just started carving the roast. Pearl pushed her plate slightly away before even tasting it. A small gesture. But I noticed. I noticed everything. So, Clarence, she said, picking up her fork like it might be contaminated, you're retired now, right? What do you do with all your free time? I stay busy, I said simply. I'm sure, she replied, her tone sharp with disinterest. Must be lonely in such a big house. Ever think about downsizing? This place must cost a fortune to keep up. Gordon leaned slightly toward her, an unconscious gesture, but one that spoke volumes. For the first time that night, I realized they were a team, and I was on the outside. The house is paid off, I said evenly. Maintenance isn't a problem. Still, she said, brushing invisible dust off her sleeve, for bedrooms for one person. And the neighborhood isn't what it used to be. Property values have dropped. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. This wasn't small talk. She wasn't chatting. She was calculating. The neighborhood is fine, I said. Of course, she replied with that same polished smile. She placed a hand on Gordon's arm, a possessive little touch. We were actually talking about this after the wedding. It just seems silly to rent when there's all this unused space here. We could really breathe new life into this place. And there it was, the real reason she was here. She wasn't meeting me. She was staking her claim. I looked at Gordon. He wouldn't meet my eyes. This is my home, I said quietly. Pearl's smile widened. Of course it is, she said softly. For now. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my hands starting to tremble. But 30 years as a firefighter had taught me control. How to keep your head when everything around you burns. I stood up. Thank you both for coming, I said. I think we're done for tonight. Gordon blinked. Dad, we just got here. I said we're done. Pearl's mask slipped, just for a moment, revealing something cold beneath. Then she gathered her purse, composed herself, and stood. "Well," she said, "I suppose we know where we stand." Gordon looked torn, like he couldn't understand what had gone wrong, as if he hadn't heard every insult, as if he hadn't laughed when she mocked me. I walked to the front door and opened it. The March air was cold against my face. Pearl walked out first, her heels clicking sharply on the porch. Gordon hesitated. "Dad." "Good night, Gordon." He left without another word. I closed the door, locked it, and stood there in the heavy silence of my house. My hands were shaking now. I went to the kitchen and let them. Would you like me to continue this story, showing what happens after this night? Pearl's secret past, the recognition moment with her parents, and the revenge twist where her world collapses? That would complete it perfectly in the silent revenge cinematic tone. The dinner I'd spent hours preparing sat cooling on the table. Pearl's plate was untouched, pushed away as if it were rubbish. I cleared the table slowly, scraping her barely tasted food into the trash, then washed each dish with careful, controlled movements. My jaw ached from clenching. She had come into my home and cataloged everything as if she were already deciding where to hang her pictures. And my son had sat there and let her do it. I dried the last plate and put it away, turned off the kitchen light, and stood in the dark living room, too angry to sleep. I replayed the evening on a loop. Her smirk, Gordon's weak chuckle, the casual comment about unused space, as if I were just an inconvenient obstacle between her and my property. The anger settled into something colder and more precise. This woman didn't see me as a person. She saw an asset to be acquired. I never went to bed. I sat in my recliner, watching the streetlights paint slow shadows across the ceiling, hearing the line over and over in my head. "At least you won't need a Halloween mask." Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Gordon's face, his laugh, the way he leaned toward her instead of defending me. By dawn, I had replayed the whole scene 24 times, and each replay made it clearer. This wasn't about family. It was about real estate. The phone rang at 8:30. Gordon's name flashed on the caller ID. "Yes." I answered. "You embarrassed us last night," he said, voice tight and accusing. "Pearl was trying to connect with you, and you just shut down. What's your problem?" My chest went quiet and cold. "She was joking," he said. "You're too sensitive. Apologize." "No," I said. "I don't." His tone turned petulant. "Fine," he snapped. "Don't expect to hear from us for a while." He hung up. I set the phone down and looked at my hands. The shaking I'd had the night before had burned out, leaving something harder in its place. For the next week, I kept my routine. Morning walk, grocery shopping on Tuesday, coffee at the diner on Thursday. But Gordon's absence hovered over everything. I drove past his apartment twice without stopping, just watching the windows, imagining Pearl inside planning her next move. At night I read Oregon inheritance laws, estate planning, property rights. The glow of the screen stung my eyes, but I kept going, taking notes in my careful handwriting, paging through sections on protecting assets from family claims. I was learning the rules of a game I had never known I was playing. 7 days after the first call, Gordon rang again. His voice was different, excited, rushed. "Dad, great news. Pearl and I are engaged. The wedding's in July." I measure my answer. "That's fast." "When you know," he said, too convinced, too eager. "We've been talking logistics. Your house makes perfect sense. So much room you don't use. We'd be helping you out." There was again my house. "Their logistics. What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew. "You've got all that space," Gordon said. 4 bedrooms, just sitting empty. Pearl's already picking paint colors for the guest rooms. "Those aren't guest rooms," I thought. "This is my home. You and Pearl will not be moving into my house," I said, flat and final. "Not now. Not after the wedding. Not ever." "You can't be serious," he said. "I am," I replied. "This conversation is over." I hung up before he could respond and sat with the silent phone in my hand, feeling something inside me shift from wounded to resolved. They wanted to play chess with my life. Fine. They'd picked the wrong opponent. I went to my office, opened the filing cabinet, and spread everything out on the desk. The deed to the house, the old will, bank statements, pension documents. I inventoried what I'd built in 30 years, pulling people out of burning buildings, saving lives, and considered what they thought they could simply take because I was older and alone. I called a notary. "I need someone to come to my home," I said. "Estate documents. As soon as possible." 2 days later, a professional woman in her 40s arrived with a leather briefcase. I had spent the intervening days drafting and researching. We sat at the same dining table where Pearl had sneered, and I signed new documents. Each signature felt like drawing a line in the sand. "These changes mean your estate will be handled according to these terms, regardless of any family expectations," the notary explained, flipping through the papers. "Are you certain?" "I'm certain," I said. "Where do I sign?" After she left, I opened a fresh notebook and wrote everything down. Pearl's background, the little tells I'd noticed, questions to follow up. Gordon's finances, if they were so eager for space, were probably stretched thin. I circled tactics, crossed out options that wouldn't work, and began drafting a plan. By afternoon, the sun slanted through the windows, and my reflection in the dark computer screen looked different, harder and calmer. I wasn't the eager host trying to charm my son's fiancée anymore. I wasn't the father hoping Gordon would stand up for me. I was a man who knew how to assess threats, make plans, and execute under pressure. I'd spent a lifetime making split-second decisions where lives were on the line. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. But it would be on my terms, with my rules, and they wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. The phone rang again. "Gordon." I didn't answer. Let go to voicemail. His muffled voice through the speaker sounded frustrated. "Dad, we need to talk about this," he said. I let the message play and sat very still, the notebook open on my lap. The conversation would come. When it did, it would be on my terms. "You're being unreasonable. Call me back." I erased the message without listening to the rest. There was nothing left to discuss. They had made their move. Now I would make mine. 3 quiet weeks passed. I kept my routines, though everything felt hollow. I worked in the garage, reorganizing tools I'd already organized twice. I answered calls from old colleagues, but not from Gordon. The silence from my son didn't feel accidental. It felt strategic, like he and Pearl were regrouping. I knew what that meant. People like Pearl didn't give up. They adapted. The doorbell rang one Tuesday afternoon while I was replacing a hinge on my workbench. I wiped my hands, walked through the house, and saw Gordon through the front window, alone, shifting his weight, looking uneasy. I opened the door. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside. "Sure." I didn't offer him coffee. We sat in the living room, me in my chair, him on the couch. The air between us was stiff, formal. Whatever this visit was, it wasn't social. "Pearl and I have been planning the wedding." He began, his hands clasped tightly between his knees. "The venues in Portland aren't cheap, and we want to do things right, to start our marriage properly." He hesitated, then looked at his hands. "I need to borrow $15,000. There it was. Clean, direct, almost respectable in its bluntness. "That's a significant amount," I said evenly. "I know," he replied quickly, "but we're family. This is important. Pearl's used to a certain lifestyle. Her parents would help, but they've got their own financial situation. We'll pay you back, obviously, once we're settled." My answer is no. He blinked, as if I'd spoken another language. "What?" "I live on a fixed pension," I said. "That money isn't available." His jaw tightened. "Come on, Dad. You could access home equity if you wanted. You just don't want to help us." "I don't want to fund a wedding I'm not convinced should happen," I replied calmly. Gordon shot to his feet, pacing. "This is exactly what Pearl said you'd do. You're sitting in a house worth $500,000 and you won't help your only son get married. What are you saving it all for?" "It's mine," I said quietly. "I earned it. That's reason enough." "Earned it," he repeated bitterly. "You worked, sure. But now you're here alone with 4 empty bedrooms while Pearl and I are cramped in a 1-bedroom apartment, struggling to plan a decent wedding. You won't." "Won't what?" I interrupted. "Hand over my equity because your fiancé is used to a certain lifestyle?" His face flushed red. "That's not fair. Pearl really wants to be part of this family. She's already thinking about our future here." She even found this great designer who specializes in updating older homes while keeping their character. She's thinking long-term, Dad. She's thinking about. I stood up, updating my home while I'm still living in it. He froze. He knew he'd said too much. She was just looking ahead, he stammered, making plans for when. Eventually, I'll die, and she'll redecorate. The silence between us stretched tight. I walked to my desk drawer, pulled out the folder I'd prepared weeks earlier, and set it on the coffee table between us. Since we're discussing my assets, I said, you should know I've revised my estate plan. He stared at the folder like it might bite him. When I die, I continued, this house will be sold. The proceeds will go to the Portland Firefighters Benevolent Fund. His face went pale. You're cutting me out of your will. They stayed for about an hour. Pearl was warm, friendly, asking about my neighbors. When she hugged me goodbye, it was brief and appropriate. Gordon looked hopeful. The visits continued, first once a week, then twice. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes offering help with yard work I didn't need. Pearl kept up her act perfectly, but I watched for the cracks. They came. Standing in my front window one afternoon, Pearl looked across the street at my neighbor's yard. Your neighbor really should do something about that lawn, she said. It makes the whole street look unfortunate. Tom works 2 jobs, I replied evenly. He does his best. She didn't catch the warning in my tone. Well, property values affect everyone. Some people just don't understand that. I filed that away. Another visit, she casually brought up finances. Have you thought about what you'll do with the house eventually? Maintaining it alone must be expensive. Gordon and I were researching reverse mortgages. I'm not discussing my finances with you. I cut in. She backed off with a quick smile and changed the subject, but I'd already heard the intent behind her question. After each visit, I documented everything in my notebook, the comments, the tone, the patterns. Her interest in my house was never gone, just better disguised. 4 weeks into her redemption tour, they visited on a Sunday afternoon. Pearl excused herself to use the bathroom. When they left an hour later, I noticed a few magazines on my coffee table. Restoration Hardware, West Elm. Furniture catalogs. Sticky notes poked out from the pages, marked with Pearl's handwriting. Master bedroom, lighter colors. Living room, modern minimalist. Replace that awful wallpaper. She'd written the room names from my house. Left them there deliberately, a message, a claim, a preview of what she still planned to take. The next visit I was ready. You left some reading material here, I said casually, holding up one of the catalogs. Her expression flickered, surprise, then calculation. Oh, those. I was just getting ideas for our apartment. I flipped to a marked page. Master bedroom, lighter colors. You don't have a master bedroom in your apartment, Pearl. Her smile froze. Gordon looked confused. I must have been daydreaming about houses, she said lightly. You know how it is, looking at furniture and imagining things. You were imagining my master bedroom, I said. Dad. Gordon started, she was just planning to redecorate my home. Again, I looked at Pearl. You haven't changed, Pearl. You've only changed your approach. For a brief second, her mask cracked. I saw it. The anger, sharp and unfiltered, before she smoothed it away and put her sweet face back on. But I'd already seen enough. You're being paranoid, Pearl said, her voice calm, but her tone had an edge now. Am I? I asked quietly. You've spent weeks pretending to care, bringing groceries I don't need, asking fake questions about my life, while making notes about which rooms you'll update first. Gordon stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. She made notes in a catalog. Gordon, I said, keeping my voice even. Room names from my house. Specific plans for spaces she doesn't live in and never will. They left soon after. No warmth in their goodbye this time. Pearl's performance had cracked wide open, and she knew it. When the house went quiet, I flipped through the catalogs again. Each sticky note, each scribbled measurement, every furniture choice matched to a specific room. This wasn't daydreaming, it was a strategy. She'd been planning an interior design for a house she already believed was hers. I went to the filing cabinet, pulled out the estate documents, and double-checked everything related to the charity foundation. All in order. Legally airtight. Pearl had changed her tactics, slowed her approach, but she couldn't hide her nature. Her contempt for working-class neighbors, her obsession with property values, her inability to stop planning for a future that didn't belong to her, all of it revealed who she really was. I'd given her enough rope. She'd show me everything I needed to see. The war hadn't ended. It had simply gone underground. And now, I knew exactly what I was fighting. 4 days later, the phone rang during breakfast. I was halfway through my toast, coffee steaming beside me, reading the local section of the paper. Ordinary Tuesday morning. "Dad," Gordon said, his voice falsely bright, the tone people use before they ask for something outrageous. "Great news. We've moved the wedding up to July, and Pearl thinks it makes sense for us to move in right after. You got all that space, and honestly, we're worried about you being alone." My hand tightened around the phone. "I'm not alone," I said calmly. "I'm independent, and you're not moving in. Don't be like that. Think about it practically. 4 bedrooms, just you rattling around in there. We'd help with expenses, keep you company." "Gordon," I interrupted, "the answer is no." His tone shifted, frustration seeping through his polished cheerfulness. "You know what your problem is? You're selfish. You'd rather sit in that big house alone than help your own son. Do you even want me to be happy? I want you to be happy with someone who isn't trying to steal my home." "Steal," he snapped. "We're trying to build a family, but you're so stuck in your ways, so bitter about being alone, that you can't see that." There was background noise. Then Pearl's voice, shrill and close. She'd taken the phone. "You ungrateful old man," she screamed. "We've tried being nice, tried including you, and you just push us away. You're standing in the way of our future because you're bitter and alone and can't stand seeing other people happy." I held the phone away from my ear. Her voice came through high and distorted, filled with venom. Nothing like the soft-spoken woman from that lunch, or the one who brought groceries and smiled sweetly. "This conversation is over," I said evenly. "We'll see about that." She spat before the line went dead. I set the phone down carefully. My toast had gone cold. I wasn't hungry anymore. The silence that followed felt heavier than before, like the air before a storm. 3 days passed. No calls. No visits. I kept my usual routines, but the tension sat in my chest like pressure building behind a wall. Then, the mail came. Among the bills and flyers was a professional envelope, Portland Realty Group. I opened it standing at the counter. "Dear homeowner, thank you for your interest in our property valuation services. Per your request through Ms. Pearl Morrison, we prepared a preliminary market analysis for your property at *. I froze. Then read it again. Estimated value, $540,000. Request date, 3 weeks ago, right in the middle of her charm campaign. While she'd been visiting with groceries and smiles, pretending to care, she'd been pricing my house, researching what it was worth, calculating her profit, setting the groundwork to take it. I picked up the phone and called the realty office. "Portland Realty Group, how can I help you?" The woman's voice was polite, professional. "I'm a homeowner at this address," I said flatly. "I never authorized this appraisal." A pause. "Our records show Ms. Pearl Morrison contacted us on behalf of the family. She said you'd agreed to explore options for estate planning purposes." "I agreed to nothing," I said. "Send me every piece of correspondence related to this request. Emails, notes, documents. All of it." "Of course, sir." I apologize for the confusion. "We'll send everything today." I hung up, stood there, holding the letter, feeling something cold and final settle into place. She hadn't just wanted my house. She was already planning what to do with it after she had it. That afternoon, I drove downtown to an office I'd researched days earlier. Rebecca Chun, attorney at law. Her receptionist led me to a quiet conference room overlooking the river. Ms. Chun arrived shortly after, sharp suit, reading glasses, professional calm. "Tell me what's happening, Mr. Phillips." I spread the documents across her table. The property deed, my will, the real estate letter, the catalogs with Pearl's notes. Then I explained everything: Gordon's engagement, Pearl's behavior, the insults, the apologies, the false reconciliation, and now the appraisal. She listened carefully, taking notes in neat shorthand, occasionally glancing up to ask precise questions. When I finished, she set her pen down. What you're describing is financial exploitation positioning, she said. She's laying groundwork to claim an interest in your property. The fact that she's already researching market value means she's planning well ahead. Can she succeed? I asked. Not if we move quickly, she said. Your mental competence is clear. Your decisions are rational. We'll create structures she can't penetrate. Over the next hour, she outlined a strategy. Living trust amendments, transfer on death deed updates, documentation confirming sound mind and absence of undue influence, and formal beneficiary verification with the charity foundation. Each page, she drafted close another door Pearl thought she could pry open. She'll have no standing to contest anything, Ms. Chen assured me. Once these documents are properly executed and witnessed, they'll form legal barriers she can't break through, even with aggressive litigation, especially here in Oregon, where property rights are strongly protected. I signed for the next 40 minutes. Each page notarized, witnessed, dated, sealed. Every signature was another lock on the door Pearl had tried to force open. When we were done, Ms. Chun slid a leather portfolio toward me. Keep these somewhere secure, she said, and make sure your son knows they exist. Transparency removed her ability to claim surprise or manipulation later. I drove home with the portfolio on the passenger seat, the weight of those papers heavier than any I'd carried from a fire scene. Back home, I locked the documents in my safe, kept copies in my desk, and spread them across the dining room table one last time, reviewing every measure of protection I'd built. The irrevocable trust, the transfer on death deed, the updated will with a mental competency affidavit, letters of intent, charity beneficiary confirmations, and the foundation's acceptance documentation. 4 months ago, Pearl Morrison had walked into my life with a plan. Not love, not family, but acquisition. She'd insulted me, manipulated my son, pretended kindness, researched property values, and drafted renovation plans for a home she didn't yet own. But tonight, every door she had planned to walk through was locked. When Gordon called again, I let it go to voicemail. I didn't even listen. Whatever he wanted to say, whatever new angle Pearl had fed him, didn't matter anymore. My home, my work, my legacy were now secured behind walls she could never climb and documents she could never touch. A week passed in deliberate silence. I spent it working in my garage, tending my small vegetable garden, and having quiet coffee with Tom from across the street. The idea that Gordon and I might never fully repair our relationship hurt less than I'd imagined. Maybe I'd been bracing for that for a long time. Then came a Tuesday call. Gordon's number. I hesitated before answering. Dad, his voice sounded tired. I know you're angry. I know Pearl crossed lines, but the wedding's in 3 weeks. I can't get married with this tension between us. I stayed silent, letting him fill the gap. Pearl's parents, Thomas and Donna, they're good people. Maybe if we all meet, we can find some understanding. Just one dinner. Please. If it happens, I said slowly, it's in a restaurant. Neutral ground. He hesitated. Having them come to your home would mean something. It would show you're willing to include her family. Please, Dad, let them see who you really are. I weighed the risk. One dinner. One last attempt to reach my son before his marriage sealed his loyalty to her completely. All right, I said, but this is the last try. No more negotiations. After Saturday, we'll both know where we stand. Thank you, Dad, he breathed, relief rushing through his voice. Don't thank me yet, I replied. Truth has a way of showing up uninvited. We set the dinner for Saturday at 6. Gordon and Pearl would come together. Her parents would arrive separately. 6 people, 1 table. Whatever happened next would settle everything. That evening, I walked through the house, seeing it not as my home, but as the stage for what was coming. The dining room where she'd insulted me. The living room where I'd refused to fund their wedding. The kitchen where I'd received the real estate letter. Every room had its chapter in this story. I spent the next days preparing. Cleaned every window until it gleamed with summer light. Polished the mahogany table until it reflected the past and the present in equal measure. Washed the dishes, folded the napkins, set 6 places, precise, deliberate. I planned a meal that was warm but not extravagant. Roast chicken, seasoned vegetables, fresh bread. Food that spoke of effort, not performance. By Friday night, The house looked calm, welcoming, even though I wasn't sure I felt the same. But appearances mattered. If this dinner failed, no one would say it was because I hadn't tried. Saturday morning came early. I dressed carefully, khakis a pressed button down, respectful, simple. The chicken went in the oven at 4. By 5, the house smelled like comfort itself. I checked the dining room again. 6 chairs, 6 plates, 6 versions of truth waiting to clash. Each person would bring their own motive. Gordon wanted peace. Pearl wanted power. Her parents? Unknowns. And me, I wanted clarity. The golden light of late afternoon filled the room. Everything was ready. At 5:40, headlights swept across my window, 20 minutes early. Unexpected. I set down the towel, took a deep breath, and opened the door. Gordon and Pearl stood there, smiling, rehearsed, holding a bottle of wine. "We know we're early," Gordon said, sheepish. Pearl was ready, and I thought we could help. "Come in," I said. Pearl stepped forward, her tone sugar-sweet. "Clarence, the house looks lovely. You've gone to so much trouble." She touched my arm lightly. Practiced affection disguised as sincerity. "It's no trouble," I said, hanging their coats. The wine was expensive, a peace offering, or a distraction. "See," Gordon said, visibly relieved. "Told you this would be good." We moved to the kitchen. I pulled the chicken from the oven, perfectly timed. Gordon immediately started helping, arranging dishes in the dining room. Pearl, without asking, went straight to the right drawer for the bread knife. "Third drawer," she said casually. I remember from my other visits. Her eyes met mine, and behind her polite smile I saw it. Satisfaction. She'd memorized the house. My house. Gordon's phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen. "Work. I'm sorry, just 2 minutes." He stepped outside, phone to his ear, pacing the porch. Inside, the air changed. Just Pearl and me. Her smile fell. The transformation was immediate. No more act, no charm. Just cold calculation. "You understand your mistake now, old man?" she whispered, her voice sharp and venomous. "Gordon's on my side. Completely. He does whatever I tell him. You can hide behind your wills and trusts all you want, but you've already lost." I kept my hand steady on the counter and met her eyes without flinching. "After the wedding," she said softly, leaning closer, her voice like a slow poison, "this house, your money, everything you're trying so hard to protect, it'll all be mine. It's just a matter of time." She moved in, closing the distance between us, invading the air I was breathing. "Gordon will convince you," she continued, "or I'll just wait you out. Either way, what are you now? 62? How many years do you really have left?" "Enough," I said quietly. She laughed, a soft, mocking sound that curled at the edges of the room. "Look at you," she sneered, "alone in this big old house, clinging to furniture and pride because that's all you have left. You couldn't keep your wife. You're losing your son. You're just a sad old man pretending paperwork can protect him from reality." "You're wrong about one thing," I said. Her smile sharpened. "And what's that?" "I'm not playing games." Her eyes narrowed, the warmth gone. "You think you're tough? That your legal tricks matter? I've been planning this since before Gordon proposed. Every move, every word, calculated. You're not fighting me, old man. You're fighting someone who knows exactly what she wants and exactly how to get it." The doorbell rang. For a split second, her expression cracked. The predator vanished, replaced by the performer scrambling to put her mask back on. She straightened, adjusted her dress, and drew in a calm breath. By the time I turned away, her voice and posture were perfect again, every trace of venom gone. I walked through the dining room, where Gordon had set the dishes neatly in place. The table looked beautiful under the chandelier light, wine glasses gleaming, silverware aligned. The scene was ready. Behind me, I heard the back door open. "Sorry about that," Gordon said cheerfully, stepping inside. "Work crisis averted. Did I miss anything?" "Just me telling your father how much this evening means to us," Pearl said smoothly. Her tone was syrup-sweet, flawless. You never know what had just happened in that kitchen. Her performance was seamless, instant, practiced, perfect. Her parents should be here any minute, Gordon added, coming beside me as I reached the front door. His eyes were bright, full of hope. "You're really going to like them, Dad. They're good people, down to earth. Not fancy. I paused, hand resting on the cold metal of the doorknob. Something about this moment felt weighted, like the air itself knew what was coming. The house was warm behind me, dinner ready, wine breathing, my son standing close enough that I could feel his presence. And Pearl, somewhere behind us, standing in her mask of politeness, convinced she'd already won. On the other side of that door waited two strangers, people who, somehow, were supposed to make sense of the chaos Pearl had brought into our lives. My pulse quickened, not from fear but from instinct. The same instinct that had kept me alive for 30 years running into burning buildings. That sense when something unseen was shifting. When the structure wasn't stable, even if it looked fine. I turned the knob. The door opened, and everything I thought I knew began to collapse. A couple stood on the porch, mid-60s, neatly dressed. The man wore a pressed button-down, the woman a simple navy dress. Both smiled politely at first. "You must be," I started, but the man's expression changed. His smile froze, then disappeared. His eyes locked onto mine, not casual, but searching. He grabbed his wife's arm. "Wait, Donna, look at his face. Really look." She turned toward me fully. Her expression shifted from polite to confused, and then recognition. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Your face," she whispered. "I know your face. I don't think we've met before," I said cautiously. "We have," the man said, stepping closer. His voice trembled. 25 years ago, you saved our daughter's life." Gordon appeared behind me. "What? Dad, what's he talking about?" Thomas, his name came back in fragments, didn't look at Gordon. His gaze stayed fixed on me. "Our house caught fire," he said. "September 2000. We got out, but Pearl hid. She was only 7. Terrified. She hid in the closet upstairs." Tom seemed to slow. The words echoed. Pearl, 7 years old, hiding. "You went in when the others said it was too dangerous," Donna said through tears. "You carried her out. She wasn't breathing. You saved her." Thomas nodded, his voice breaking. "I saw your face that night, covered in soot, exhausted, but you were holding our little girl. The building collapsed right after you came out. You could have died saving her." My thoughts raced backward. 25 years, a night I'd nearly forgotten. A house fire on the east side. Family out. Child trapped upstairs. Captain shouting to wait for backup. No time. I'd gone in anyway. Found her in a closet. Carried her out. And now that same child stood in my kitchen. I carried her out just seconds before the ceiling gave way. "Pearl," I said slowly, looking at Donna. "Your daughter, Pearl, is our Pearl." Donna's hand shot forward, gripping mine tightly as if to confirm I was real. "The little girl you rescued. She has scars on her back and arms from that fire. You gave her a future. You gave us our daughter back." There was movement in the kitchen doorway. Pearl appeared, still wearing that fake smile she used to hide behind. "What's going on?" she asked. Then she heard Donna's words. "The firefighter who saved our daughter 25 years ago." Pearl froze. Her smile vanished. "The fire," she whispered. I remember, strong arms, someone carrying me. She looked straight at me now, really looked, and I saw the moment recognition hit her like a wave. Her eyes widened. Her voice cracked. "It was you." Her knees buckled, and she dropped to the floor, covering her face as sobs broke through. "What have I done?" she gasped. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." The room went completely silent. Thomas and Donna were holding onto my arms, tears streaming down their faces. Gordon stood near the dining table, stunned. And Pearl, the same woman who had insulted me, manipulated my son, and tried to take my house, was now collapsed on my living room floor, shaking. The irony hit hard. This cruel, entitled woman who mocked my face and called me an obstacle was the 7-year-old girl I'd carried out of a burning home. The child whose life I'd saved at the cost of my own lungs and years of recovery. "Dad," Gordon's voice sounded distant. "You never told me you were a firefighter." "I did my job," I said quietly. Thomas's voice broke. "You did more than your job. You risked your life for our daughter." We moved to Seattle afterward. Too many memories back then, but I've thought about you every single day for 25 years. Wondered who you were. Wondered if you knew what you'd given us. Donna was crying harder now. We tried to find you, but everything was chaos. Pearl's burns, her nightmares by the time we thought to search. We didn't even know your name. Pearl made a soft, broken sound. Her parents turned toward her, confused. Sweetheart, Donna whispered. What's wrong? This is wonderful. We finally found him. She didn't know who I was, I said quietly. Donna and Thomas looked between us, the confusion deepening. She's been trying to take my house, I continued. Insulting me, manipulating Gordon, planning to move in after the wedding. I changed my will to protect what's mine, and she called me an ungrateful old man standing in the way of her future. Silence filled the room again, heavy and suffocating. Pearl was sobbing now, hunched over, face hidden. The first time we met, I said, turning to her parents, she told me I didn't need a Halloween mask because my face was scary enough. Donna's hand went to her throat. Thomas looked sick. I didn't know. Pearl whispered through tears. I swear I didn't know it was you. I didn't remember your face, just the smoke, the arms carrying me. If you'd known, I said quietly, would you have been different? Or just found another way to use it? She looked up at me, makeup streaked, eyes swollen, her face wrecked with guilt. I don't know, she whispered. I hated my scars, the nightmares, the fear. I spent my whole life trying to prove I was strong, that no one could hurt me. And in doing that, I became cruel. Gordon finally found his voice again. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about this? I sighed, because I left that life behind when your mother got sick. After she died, talking about the past just reopened wounds that never healed. But you saved lives, he said. You saved her life. I save a lot of lives, I replied softly. That was my job for 30 years. Most of them, I never knew what happened after. I did my work and went home. Thomas was staring at me, voice trembling. You gave us 25 more years with our daughter. Every memory, every milestone, we owe to you. Pearl let out another broken sob. I stood there, surrounded by tears and silence, realizing that everything I thought I knew about this situation had just been rewritten. The person who tried to destroy me was the same one whose life I'd once saved. And I didn't know what that changed, or if it changed anything at all. Thomas and Donna were the first to move. Still holding onto each other, they quietly took seats on one side of the table. Gordon helped Pearl up from the floor. She was trembling, unsteady, and guided her to a chair across from her parents. She sat down, but didn't look up, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if holding her pieces together. I remained standing until everyone was seated, then took my place at the head of the table. The dinner I'd prepared sat untouched on the sideboard, forgotten. No one was thinking about food anymore. Tell me what happened that night, I said to Thomas. He nodded, took a slow breath, and began. It was September 2000. The smoke alarm went off at 2 a.m. By the time we woke, the fire had already consumed the first floor. Faulty wiring, an electrical fire. We escaped through the back door and made it to the lawn. That's when we realized Pearl wasn't with us. Donna's voice trembled as she continued. She was upstairs. When the alarm went off, she panicked. Instead of coming to us, she hid. That's what terrified 7-year-olds do. Thomas's hands moved as he spoke, tracing the layout of the house, the height of the flames. The firefighters arrived within minutes, but the building was unstable. The captain said they had to wait for backup. We kept screaming that our daughter was inside, but he wouldn't risk sending anyone in yet. I remembered. Station 12, East Side. Captain Morrison, by the book, cautious. But one firefighter didn't wait. Thomas's voice shook. You went in anyway. The captain was yelling at you not to go, said the place could collapse, but you didn't listen. The memory hit hard after 25 years. I'd been with Portland Fire for 7 years then, young enough to think I was invincible, experienced enough to know better. But there was a child in that house. You disappeared into the smoke, Donna said, tears rolling down her face. It felt like hours, but it was maybe 3 minutes. Then you came out, coughing, covered in soot, carrying Pearl. She wasn't moving. I could still feel it. Her small, limp body in my arms, the burning air clawing at my lungs, the beam that fell behind me, missing by inches. The captain's expression, a mix of fury and relief, as I stumbled out with her. The paramedics worked on her right there on the lawn, Thomas said softly. You stayed until they got her breathing again. You had burns on your arms and face. He glanced at my forearms, faint scars still visible. But you wouldn't leave, Donna said. Even when they told you to get treated, you said, she's 7 years old. I'm not waiting. Pearl made a small sound, half sob, half gasp, and her hand went instinctively to her shoulder blade, where I knew the scars still were. We moved to Seattle 3 weeks later, Thomas said. Pearl spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The house was destroyed. We tried to find you before we left, but we didn't even know your name, just that you were the firefighter who saved our daughter. I turned to Pearl. She was hunched over, crying silently. Pearl, I said softly, look at me. She lifted her head slowly. Her face was a ruin. Makeup streaked, eyes red, expression raw. Tell me why, I asked gently. Why did you become this person? Her voice came out as a whisper, fragile and broken. I spent 25 years pretending that fire didn't define me. I hid my scars, never talked about it. I built this image of someone strong, untouchable. If I looked down on people, they couldn't look down on me. But it was all fake. Donna's voice cracked. It was... Pearl nodded. I was terrified people would see me as damaged. So I became someone else, someone who hurt before they could be hurt. And in doing that, she hesitated, then said the words like a confession. I became cruel, the kind of person I should have been grateful not to become. Gordon spoke for the first time since we sat down. Why didn't you ever tell me? She looked at him, fresh tears falling. Because I didn't want you to see me as broken. I would have understood. I didn't want understanding, she said quietly. I wanted to look strong, perfect. And look what that turned me into. Look what I did to your father. The silence that followed was heavy. I stood slowly. All eyes turned to me. I went into that fire to save a child who deserved a chance at life, I said evenly. A child who was innocent and afraid. I'm disappointed that child grew into someone who used cruelty to feel powerful, someone who tried to take what wasn't hers. But I paused. I see remorse now. Real remorse. So, I forgive you, Pearl. Her head shot up, eyes wide in disbelief. However, I continued firmly. Forgiveness isn't the same as trust. Respect must be earned. If you want to be part of this family, prove it. Not with words, but with actions. Become the person that 7-year-old deserved to be. She nodded through tears. I will. The meal went untouched, but something far more important had been served. Truth, recognition, and the possibility of transformation. Gordon reached for Pearl's hand. She held it like it was keeping her anchored. Thomas looked at me, voice trembling. 25 years, he said softly. We've carried gratitude all this time, and only now can we finally say thank you. Life has strange timing, I said quietly. Donna wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now, I said, looking around the table, we see if words become actions, if remorse becomes change, if understanding becomes growth. Pearl nodded again. I'll prove it to you. Then prove it, I replied simply. Not with grand gestures, in the small choices you make from now on. 2 weeks later, Pearl called. I'd like to talk, she said. Just coffee. No pressure, I promise. I agreed, curiosity, maybe or hope. She arrived the next morning with 2 cups of coffee, nervous but sincere. We sat on the porch. I didn't invite her inside, and she didn't ask. I started seeing a therapist, she said softly. Someone who specializes in trauma and behavior patterns. I'm trying to understand why I became who I was. That's a good step, I said. I know it doesn't erase the past, she continued, but I want you to know I'm serious about changing. We talked for 20 minutes. She asked genuine questions about my career, about the lives I'd saved. She listened, really listened, and she came back the next week. And the week after that. The wedding that summer was small, just a garden ceremony with 30 guests. Pearl insisted it stays simple. I want it to be about us, Gordon told me, not about appearances. I sat in the 3rd row, watching them exchange vows. Pearl's hand shook, but her voice was steady. Thomas and Donna cried the entire time. The reception was short, sincere, and peaceful. Weeks later, Gordon called. We signed a lease, he said. 2-bedroom in Hawthorne. Pearl said we should star in our own place. not yours. Relief washed through me. Boundaries were finally being respected, not by force but by choice. Then, in mid-August, I received a letter. It was 3 pages, handwritten. Dear Clarence, I can't take back mocking your life or trying to manipulate you. I can't erase the cruelty I showed. I can only say I'm ashamed of who I was and grateful you gave me the chance to change. You saved my life twice, once from the fire and once for myself. I read it twice, then wrote back briefly. I acknowledge your efforts. Keep doing the work. Respect is earned through action. I'm willing to see where this goes. That evening, as dusk settled, I sat on my porch, my house solid, my peace intact. The legal documents I'd once prepared as weapons now sat quietly in a drawer, no longer needed. My phone rang. Gordon. Hey, Dad, he said. Pearl and I were thinking about trying that new Italian place downtown this weekend. You free? Saturday? Perfect. Just dinner. We'd love to see you. I'll be there. After the call, I sat in the quiet, thinking about everything. The plans, the walls I'd built, the battles I prepared for. All unnecessary now. I prepared for war, but truth did the work for me. The woman I once saw as an enemy turned out to be someone I'd saved, and through truth, she'd found a chance to save herself. Sometimes revenge isn't needed. Sometimes the truth is the sharpest justice. The evening air cooled. Streetlights flickered on. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, the sound of ordinary life returning. My neighborhood, my home, my peace. I had saved a 7-year-old girl from a fire 25 years ago. I'd done it again, just differently this time. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's standing firm until the storm passes and peace returns. I locked my door, took one last look around, and smiled. My house, my peace, my life, all still mine. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.